We are going to talk a little bit about professional development. We're going to talk about professional associations. We're going to talk about the importance of the things that we do as it relates to keeping up our professional abilities, learning from others, belonging to associations. But today we're going to talk about International Associations of Emergency Management and so IAEM and some of the things that they got coming up and what we got going on. I'm a member myself, and I'm a CEM, and I've been a member for a long time. And our guest today is going to be giving us an idea of what we got coming up, what's going on, why it's important for us to do things that we do, and how we can get better not only as a professional, but as a profession. Before, I'd like to welcome Dwayne to the show. Dwayne and I go back actually a long time. He was actually a big part, whether he knows it or not. He's actually a big part of my emergency management journey because he was one of the instructors in the basic academy when I first really got into emergency management. Let me start off the show by saying thank you, Dwayne,
You're welcome.
the part you played in that.
I did not know that, so I appreciate that. That's a great program, and back in the day, we put a lot of people through that to give them their first step into the world, right?
They told me, I think I was one of the first 300 students.
Nice.
When it first started, and then it was a great program, and that's what really introduced me, because I had been in emergency management for about 3 years learning. I was seeking that knowledge. I didn't know exactly what I got myself into. And then while I was taking another class, one of the instructors said, you need to look at this program. So I did, and I just fell in love with it. And that's what really shot me into doing what I do now 10 years later, to doing what we do. And you were a big part of that in the class. And I actually looked into your program at Millersville University. So for all those who don't know, Dwayne, I call him Dwayne, but he's Dr. Hagelgans, and he runs a program for social welfare and emergency management for Millersville University. So Dwayne, if you don't mind, if you give us a little background on who you are, what you do, and then we'll go right into some of the stuff you've been doing, and then we'll talk about IAEM.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been around a long time. I originally got my start as a volunteer firefighter, became a career firefighter. When I rose up to the position of deputy chief in the early 90s, they told me that I'm now the city's emergency manager. And I know some people can probably relate to that. And I said, how do you spell that exactly, right? So I wasn't real sure. And I became the emergency manager, started getting a bunch of my training. I'm about 35 minutes as the crow flies from 3 Mile Island. And so after the 3 Mile Island incident, GPU Nuclear, who owned it at the time, was mandated to do emergency management training, believe it or not. So I got some of my first training at 3 Mile Island. Eventually from there, worked on my education, eventually started teaching part-time here at Millersville, and our program started in 2006. I retired from the city when the program here was expanding greatly and started here full-time in 2012. So we have a bachelor's degree, we have a master's degree. We fortunately have both in person and online. So like our master's program, I always used to say to people, there's no way we could run a master's program in person because where would you get the people? And now I think today we can easily see there's enough emergency managers out there we could do that. So I've taught the program now. I'm now the chair of the program. In addition to that, I'm still a local responder. I'm still the local emergency manager here in Lancaster County, and do a lot of work with the IAEM, as you mentioned. So I've been the conference committee chair for the last 4 years, but I've been a member for the last, it's got to be 16, 17 years. When you talk about that basic academy and being one of the first 300, you were certainly one of the early ones because we were running so many classes when we first started. We were running 2 classes at a time, 4 times a year. So it didn't take us too long to get to 300 because we were really ramping that up. Helped do the rewrite of that a couple of times. Haven't been part of that program for a little while now, just got too busy with school, but it's a great program, certainly for people that want to get their toe wet to figure out what this great profession is all about.
Yeah, and just so everybody, to clarify, that program was the Emergency Management Professionals Program. They have the basic, the leadership, and the executive academies, or the advanced academy. They went from leadership to advanced. So basic, advanced, and executive academies. And the basic academies where I really got the education and a lot of the network that I utilize today for emergency management as well. I met a lot of great people that I became friends with throughout that. So a very great program, and it's still going, and it's moved a lot to go there, and I'm a big proponent of it as well. I talk about it a lot, actually. But let's move into you're the committee chair, or the conference chair, conference committee chair for IAEM and the conference, the yearly conference. And we also have I don't know, is it a virtual biannual or is it annual as well?
We do. We started, you might find it hard to believe, we started the virtual conference in 2020, and you'll quickly figure out why that happened with COVID. And then we went back to our live annual conference in 2021, but we had such success with the virtual. And one of the things we looked at is, we travel around the country for our conference, but we don't always have the opportunity to have people come, right? So people may not have the resources, or they might not be able to get the time to come. So we said, what, there's a whole audience here that we need to help educate and train and teach them what's at the annual. So we started doing the virtual conference, and now we've done it every year. So the virtual conference is always in the spring. It's coming up here May 9th. And then the annual conference is usually November. Occasionally we'll go into October. This year, excited for the annual conference because it's in Kentucky, in Louisville. First time we'll be in Louisville. It's always cool, just like last year we went to Colorado Springs to get someplace for the first time. And then we have next year we'll be out in your neck of the woods in Long Beach again, and eventually get back to Savannah. But the virtual conference now is in its 5th year. And again, it'll be May 9th. One of the cool things we're doing this year goes back to what you said earlier when you were saying about me helping you out. We're trying to help out the future of this profession. So if you're an IAEM student member, you can come to the virtual conference for free. That's new this year. If you're an emerging professional, a transitioning person, hey, I was whatever, and I'm now becoming an emergency manager, you get a reduced rate for that. And then if you are fortunately one of our brothers and sisters who are currently in a laid off state, you can come to our conference for free. We're trying to help the profession as much as we can. But yeah, that's coming up on May 9th, and you go to the website to sign up for that.
Yeah, and I'll share those links too in the show notes as well. For everybody who's maybe driving down the road, listen to this. I'll put the links in there for you to sign up, or at least go. And you can actually just go and learn more about IAEM and the things that they're doing. One thing that I'd like to talk about as it relates to the conferences is the importance of professional development and the need for these programs. And we do see, as we know, we have over 6,000 members of IAEM, but our conference only really sees 2,000 to 3,000 if we're lucky. So there's at least half that aren't showing up. So how do we increase the desire for emergency managers to really get in and continue with these, go to conferences, go to professional development, go to trainings that are offered?
And we understand some of it is certainly finance, some of it is where we're located. I think it's interesting. So when we're on the East Coast, we see a little bit different audience than the West Coast, but we always see those probably same 1,500 people, right, that come to every conference, like myself, like yourself. But we're trying to get people to understand that the conference is where you walk up and you meet the guy that wrote the book, or you meet the person that created some directive, or you meet the person that started our profession, what it was 30, 40 years ago in the current form. And so that networking, that opportunity to be there is so impressive. And it's every profession, right? Every profession has their conferences, and there's local conferences and state conferences and regional conferences, and that's great. But I'll go back to something you said about when you were at EMI, which is no longer called EMI, but that's a different story. And when you come to our conference, it's like going to that training center where I'm not just working with the people here local to my area in Lancaster. Now I'm meeting people from all around the world, and I'm listening to people from all around the world. And that's one of the things we also have really pushed this year for the conference, is to try and get more international aspects. How do you do stuff in places outside the United States? And hey, I think by far the United States is the leaders when it comes to emergency management, but there's a lot of great ideas around the world that we can learn from too, as well as them learning from us. But that opportunity to meet people, network with people. I met people at my first conference, which I think was 2010, if I remember correctly, that as you said earlier, became my friends. Just like when you go to that training center down in Emmitsburg and you meet people and they're your lifelong friends. There are people that I can drop an email on or pick up and call today because I met them at our conference from literally all over the world. So that ability to network, that ability to get educated, trained on whatever is the latest thing, I think is really important. We typically try to have something for everybody, right? I think that's important too. A couple of years ago, I was sitting in the audience watching, and I don't remember who the speaker was, and I'm thinking, man, wouldn't that be great to be that person? I'm like, I'm never going to be that person, but I'm this person. And so we've tried to also mix up even our plenaries where I could be sitting in the audience and I could be me up there. I could do that job, or I could see myself in that position. So we try to make sure we have something from the person that doesn't know how to spell emergency management to the person that's been doing it for 45 years. I think the great thing about this profession and what we see at the conference, I think you can attest to this, is that if that person has that 25, 30, 35 years, that the grandparents of what we do today, and some kid walks up to them, they gladly take them aside and talk to them and network with them. Just those opportunities. And a lot of folks are finding positions, they move around a little bit, find a job or whatever, help with research, help with a book, whatever that may be. Just so many opportunities. If your heart and soul's in it, like you and I, it's the place you're going to go and meet people to do great things.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think one of the biggest things that really drew me into emergency management, one of the reasons why I fell in love with it, is that it's such a collaborative profession. It's one of those professions that people want to work with other people. It's part of the job is to do that support and that coordination and that effort to reach out and bring partnership and together. And I think it's amazing. Of course, you come across the ones that don't want to, but for the most part, the majority are they want to have that, and they will help you as much as they can and give you the information and the mentorship that you need to be better at what you do. And I think going to these conferences, or even the virtual or in person, you get to see people from all over. You get to see different presentations. You get to see how they present. You get to see yourself up there. You get to see yourself in that position. So no, I can do that as well. And I think that really drives the professional up, which then will in turn really drive the profession forward. With everything going on right now, specifically in the government and not knowing what programs are going to be there in the future, and with people their programs being suspended or even completely just wiped out, the need for these types of things is even more important right now. How do you feel with everything that's happening right now? We can put the need to, or other items like trainings or conferences or just reading a book or watching something that someone could start that transition into emergency management.
Yeah, first of all, there's a lot of nervous people, right? I have students that are nervous, but one of the things we know are disasters aren't going away, right? And somebody's going to be doing this profession, whatever we call them, whatever that looks like. We know that it's not going to go anywhere. I just had a student get an award the other day, and our president of our university came up to him and they were talking, and the next thing you know, the president's calling me over. I'm like, what did I do now? And he said, Brandon's really concerned because of what's happened. I said, there will always be emergency management. It might look different, be called different, but from an IAEM standpoint, one of the things we're doing at the conference committee, as you, Dan, is we've been working with our communities and member engagement committee to try to help those people that aren't really sure what that next step is. Maybe they've already left the agency, maybe they are agency, whatever organization that is, maybe they've been laid off, or maybe they're thinking about leaving. And too often, I think we all do this. We get locked into, this is what I do. I was in the fire service for 30 years. And now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, now I'm going and I'm going to teach in higher ed. How do I make that step? And it was pretty traumatic leading up to that. Can I really do this? And too often, people, especially in our profession, are so used to helping everybody else, don't often have enough faith in themselves to realize they can be doing other things and helping in other ways. So next Friday, April 25th at noon, IAEM put together a panel of 4 experts to basically talk about all of us, from the newest person to the person with 40 years. What do you have to offer, and how can you work on your resume? What is it that's in your experience that'll help you transition? Maybe you've worked for government and now it's time to go to the private sector, and you're thinking, what kind of transition is that? Having transitioned from government into higher ed, I can tell you, there's no hurdle that can't be overcome. It's a pretty big leap. So we're trying to help people. And again, that's why we have the networking opportunities, the collaboration efforts. One thing great about this profession, and I teach it's great because I get to teach intro class to undergrads, and I also teach classes at the graduate level. And so I get to see very different types of education, so to speak. And I always tell the young students that the nicest thing about emergency management is we make our mistakes, we figure out what our mistakes are, and we share our mistakes. And not a lot of people in a lot of professions in the world are willing to do that. But as emergency managers, we want to make sure that some other emergency manager doesn't make some mistake that we made. And that's why we do after action reports, and that's why we make improvement plans. And that's what this, in my mind, this webinar is next week. This is our, hey, we have all these folks in the profession and now things are being, the cards are being shuffled a little bit. So let's figure out that after action and what's the improvement plan to help all these folks so that they're not going home tonight to try and figure out and worried about what's next. There is a next out there, and the folks in our profession will help you. We'll collaborate. We'll be there for you. We'll tell you, here's what we've done, and here's what you need to do, and here's what you can do. And so I just think that this profession is, and I was in the fire service, and if there's firefighters out there, you know how tight the fire service is, and folks in law enforcement know that. But emergency management is another one of those, but one of those that also collaborates across the board. It doesn't matter what your profession is, you're one of us.
Yeah. And I think, well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that too, because I think with emergency management, as you mentioned already, we're not as, you got fire, you got EMS, you got PD, it's a larger workforce. So it's almost a collaboration versus on necessity at some points, because you could be a person of one or part-time individual doing this job, and you need that collaboration, you need that help, you need that mentorship. So it becomes one of those things where you kind of have to, in order to gain the skills you need to do the job correctly. That's great. I'll be sharing that link for people to register for that. But it goes back to as well. The webinar is great, and I'll be pushing that. But it goes back even further, back to the conference, and why it's important to go to the conference, because especially at IAEM, they have resume workshops, they have interview workshops, they have aspiring emergency managers, emerging emergency manager stuff, and then you can find mentors, you can find guidance, and you can learn from those who've done it for years and years. So that's another reason why going to these events and these conferences are such important, because you have access to all these things in one place. But one thing too that you have access to at IAEM is training. You got training on front end and the back end of IAEM. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Sure. I wanted to say one thing you remind me of as you're talking there about, it could be a 1-person shop or it could be a 10,000 person shop. You might remember the exercise we do in the basic academy where you tell you to draw your org chart. And you know, that student that's in that 1-person shop goes, done, me. And then there's been times where I've had folks from FEMA and they're like, how do I draw this org chart? And that's the beauty also of this profession. But yeah, we do training pre-conference and post-conference. All that training is free. And typically we'll bring in all the consortium players. So TEACS will come in, EMI will come in. We also have, in the last 3 years, we've had a couple of groups approach us about doing training that they're willing to come in and do. Again, soup to nuts. We try every year to make sure that it changes up. So this year we're going to do PIO, and next year we're going to do PIO, and the following year PIO. So we bring in stuff of interest. All of our partners are great to work with. And again, they do pre-conference and they do post-conference. You just go in, you sign up. It's all part of the conference. It's free. We, over the last couple of years, have tried to rotate through all the courses in the Basic Academy so that over the course of years, TEACS also working with us. They have a couple different series they run, like that are 4 and 5 classes certifications. So you can get the first class at the conference, and then they'll do the other classes in following months online to help people out. Certifications, credentials, training, education, networking. It's all at this conference this year. Last year, we started a mentor program, if that makes sense. We'll call it a mentor program. We're doing it again this year at the conference, where we're trying to make time so that the Dan Scotts of the world can get together with one of my students who has yet to step foot into emergency management as a professional. And we're trying to make that from Sunday to Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday through the conference. Anything we can do to pay it forward. One of the things I'll say about this is a famous statement from somebody. If you've been to one conference, you've been to one conference. I think you can attest, Dan, that every year there's something new, something exciting. It's not, oh, this year I'm going to go and I'm going to hear a speech on this. Last year, for the first time, we actually did a plenary that was unscripted, which probably makes some people nervous. But we had a couple of our members that were down in the Southeast and went through that hurricane season, and we got them on stage and we just started asking questions. And again, if you're sitting in the audience, you're going, that could be me up there, right? That's something that I could have dealt with. And it was very emotional. They were very forthright. So again, I don't think you can come to our conference and walk away and go, I got nothing out of that. Typically what happens is people during our breakout sessions, there's always 11 sessions. People will go, this is a problem because I want to go to 3 of those. And it's like, yeah, that's the kind of speakers, the diversity of topics we get. And then to your point, we have special stuff for career workshop. We have special mentoring. We have resume reading, anything we can do to help so that unlike like you and I, who probably came into this by accident or by assignment, there's this whole generation of folks that are coming to this. They're high school, they're going to college, or they're going to their local EM, and we want to make sure that they're better prepared than we were when we started.
Yeah, it's definitely changed quite a bit because there are people that are actually growing up wanting to be emergency managers now. It's still a small number, but it's a growing number, which when I was going through just the academies in general, I only heard one person say they grew up wanting to be an emergency manager.
Yep.
Through 4, 5, 6 years, one person said that they grew up wanting to be an emergency manager. Now I've heard many more saying that they're going to school because they want to be an emergency manager. So that's actually an amazing thing to see the evolution of what's happening and that the evolution of, as we become an actual standardized profession,
Right.
and the individuals that are going to school knowing that this is what they want to do with their life. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we've always said this is a field of professionals, right? We've always been a great profession, but you go back into the 80s and 90s where so what is this emergency management thing? My buddy always used to say emergency management was 2 guys, 2 coffee cups, and a hoagie, but look at what we are today. And we had to come into ourselves. People go, if you're in the fire service, you're in law enforcement. The fire service has been around for hundreds of years. In our current form, we've been around for 50. And we need we're growing the profession. We're adding education in, which some love the idea of education, some not so much. But I've had in the last 2 years now high school kids come here as freshmen who want to earn my program. In the past, for all the years prior to that, students will come here for this or that or the other program, and then they would hear about emergency management, or they take our intro class, and then they would get into our program. But now we're seeing high school students coming in, and hey, I'm looking. I've interviewed 5 students in the last 2 months that are traveling around from program to program around the Northeast looking at emergency management programs. They're not looking at colleges, they're looking at programs of emergency management. So it says something about our profession. We're on the right trajectory.
Yeah, that's amazing. Dwayne, I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us. Let's go over the dates of those, the webinar, the virtual, and then the in-person conference one more time. I will be posting the links for everybody out there who's listening, but let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So the webinar on transitioning is next Friday, April 25th at noon Eastern time. The virtual conference is May 9th, and that runs from 10 to 5 Eastern time. We try and push that back so people on the West Coast don't have to get out of bed so early to join us. And then our virtual conference will be in Louisville in November 16th to 19th, I think is the dates. Don't have them off the top of my head. Don't hold me accountable if I was wrong with that.
I'll put them in the show notes. I will put those, the actuals are pretty awesome in the next year back in Long Beach. So anybody who wants to get a hold of you, connect with you, where do you like to email? Do you like LinkedIn?
Yep.
Do you like?
You can, yeah, I'm not as good on LinkedIn as a lot of people. So I've had people hit me up on LinkedIn and 3 weeks later, I'm like, oh, look, somebody sent me a message. So that's not my strong point. Email, they can email me here to school, dhagelgans@norrisville.edu. You can send me conference chair at IAEM.com. They come right to me here too. Email's probably the best. I will say this, if you email me, I'm pretty good about responding within 24 hours or so. If I don't, that means I got 700 emails that day. So email me again. I'm always willing. We're always looking for IAM members, new members. We're trying to grow this profession. So we're all speaking with one voice and always looking for new members of the conference committee. As Dan knows, one of about 60 people put our conference together every year, which if you understand the amount of work, which Dan certainly does, it goes into that. Always looking for new people to come along. People always go, how can I get involved? Just drop us a line and we'll get you involved. So appreciate this, Dan, especially. This is one of our main tasks is how do we get the word out? Very much appreciate you in this podcast, helping spread the word.
I want to talk to everybody and tell everybody, huge proponent for IAEM, not only as a member, but starting to get involved in more of the committees and stuff. It's been great, and I look forward to what we can do for the profession just in the coming future. And I just appreciate you taking the time. For everybody's out there driving down the road or watching, thank you for taking the time to tune in and watch. Please share, subscribe to the channel so we can help build up the profession, but also share it with somebody you feel will benefit from this and get some benefit from knowing about the conferences, the summits, and professional association. So I'm Dan Scott, and I will talk to you next time.
Thanks, Dan.